So on that same note, I know I've heard all three of you mention this while we were talking about really developing that transition plan. So the next aspect after that is actually communicating and training our staff on these tools, right? So this was a reoccurring thing when we were discussing getting this tech implemented and integrated. Can perhaps you guys share the one best practice or maybe the one innovative approach that you've used to assist in training legal professionals when it comes to new technology like
A
this?
lot of times I think in the old days, and I say the old days lightly, because in many ways I feel the old days were like just before the pandemic. For me, in my world, the pandemic hit my work and my practice in March of 2020. So everything I say is really before March of 2020, which is only, it's less than 36 months ago. So I mean, we're just over 36 months ago. As we think about that, I'm a big fan of those pen and paper how-to guides we give our staff. Now we're trying to make it actionable in our software. And I think that's really impactful. My background is estate planning, elder law, and probate estate administration. So when we go in and we say, this is every step of the way, this is who does what, this is the expected timeline, that really can help our team get the buy-in. I think today we can use Zoom just like this. We can use Loom. We can create those, both the client training side that we can put into our client portal so our clients know what they're getting from us, how to communicate with us, but the same thing in our own cloud software that runs our practice, coming in and having those training videos. This is what I want to see you do. Here's your buddy system of who's going to help you train on your software. And then here's the software that's going to tell you every step of the way you want to go in your case. I mean, I'm always thinking about it in three phases. Intake, everything until they sign the contract. Then their active case phase, so contract through closure. And then at closure, a lot of times that's where the magic happens. How do we engage these folks? How do we really make them champions of our firm? And if we have a practice where we can sell multiple services, how do we do that and put that in place too, so we can continue that advocacy? But I think a lot of times, again, and I hate to say it this way, but I've seen firms fail without it. It's that leading by example. When we have that senior partner, the shareholder, whoever it is, even if we're just two people in a firm and one team member says, I'm not going to use the software, you use it, that's
Uh,
not what here. We need that buy-in. I mean, am I
I've
right?
heard it. I've
Eric?
heard it so many times, and I see it's so toxic for a firm. It's so sad.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I find is so challenging. And a lot of times that's what we're dealing with, because as the attorney, I get it. You have 87 hats to wear today is probably a really vast understatement. So we have to just think about, how do we take back your time? And I often find, if we're putting on that bottleneck list, I need to clone myself. That's really when we need to dive into your software and see what it can take off your plate.
I think something as far as training goes is, if you have staff, create a bonus type program to where every month or every week an employee create Loom. There are lots of free tools out there where they can create their own little, here's how I do this guide. Doing your own wiki or your own website, you can have password protected for your website where they have that resource and where they can train things. And if someone finds a way of doing something that works really well for them, have them share that and celebrate that, because then other people can learn from it. And or they can say, well, okay, that's great, but how about we do it this way? And then you get that quick iteration and training at the same time where everything is documented.
Yeah, definitely a culture. And this is what I said earlier. It's got to be a culture of 6 minutes of our hour spent thinking about the process that we're using. Is this documented? Is it iterated? Does it make sense to do? There's a lot of tools. If you're using an HR platform like Bamboo HR, for example, which I strongly recommend people do, you can actually record training materials in those platforms. And maybe Audrey can speak to this as a behavior expert, but how many times do we have to hear something before we believe it or we learn it? Was it 7 times, 5 times?
At least it was 7 times before the pandemic. Now there's a lot of reasons 13 to 15, but also there's a comparison. I'm so glad you said that, Eric, because even though the pandemic, depending on your take on it, is mostly over, most people today, over 80% of Americans specifically, still have pandemic brain fog. So we're not getting back 13% to 30% of our brain because we're still overwhelmed in the space. And so I think, the easier we can make any new software changes to existing software for our team members with that hat on, and I get it. I mean, I can be a very aggressive attorney in my firm at times. I'm definitely the managing attorney of my firm, although I own it. But I mean, I try to always keep that in place, because not only are we trying to meet our clients where they are, we also want to try to meet our team members where they are. And sometimes what seems simple to all of us here, especially to this panel right here, is not going to be simple to our team that's less tech friendly, especially not to be ageist as we get older and technology is uncomfortable. We have 4 team members at Practice 42 who are over 60, and they do not interact with our technology the way most of our team members do. And we created a special portal and a special delivery system through our software for them because they're so valuable. We can't lose them just because they can't get where the rest of the team is.
Real quick, one thing, going back to documenting things, if you have the ability to create tasks in your software, like my case, has tasks and subtasks, you document each one of those tasks and everything. So when it comes up assigned to somebody, you want to have it documented so that somebody who has no idea what your practice is can sit down, they see that task on the screen, and they have everything they need to complete that task, either instructions directly in there or links. So someone can just sit down and take care of it, because you are going to lose staff. It happens. They move on or whatever. They're sick. If someone's sick, you can delegate to someone else very easily who has no idea what they're doing. But if it's documented in there, and even if you're solo, I have it all documented as well.
Establish a knowledge base for your company immediately, whether it's in your practice management software, in your SharePoint, whatever your document reserve is. Establish a knowledge base just on day one, and then just write your first process. And it doesn't have to be, it's better to just get some words in there. It doesn't have to be a literary masterpiece. And this is another thing I see staffers struggle with, because they don't feel like they're strong with the written word. And so they pause at documenting a process. So just encourage them, hey, just get it out of your head into the document. So when somebody goes to do some repetitive task or recall a process, you search the knowledge base by keyword, it pulls up, and it's some basis there. And again, you're spending, every time you pull that up, you're then iterating it the next time you use it. And listen, my business is 16 years old. We still write knowledge base articles every day. We still rewrite them and work on them. So it's a process.
By documenting, you'll find what tools you need.
We're on step 5 here. We're testing out these new tools. Does one of you in particular want to speak to, when we are implementing those new tools, what's the most effective way that you've seen to test it, gather that feedback before that full-scale rollout starts?
I mean, I'll give a one statement answer. I would say record it so that the person can watch it again as they reflect on it 7 days later, and then also share it with the team, because a lot of times our first impression is not how we feel about things later as we resonate on it.
Listen, testing, does it work? Do the thing? Does it solve the problem? Yes, then move on, right? Document it to be prepared to train on it. But as far as testing, you already have your problem scoped going into whatever technology you're trying to implement, whether it's a practice management software, billing solution, whatever. Does it solve the problem? If yes, it should work. Move and then move on to the next problem you're trying to solve, right?